What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, good people? Happy Thursday, peace, blessings, glory, praise, and honor to the Most High. I hope all is well with each and every single one of you this evening. How is everybody feeling tonight? Middle finger up to my asshole CEOs, supervisors, you assholes, you douchebags, you arrogant piece of shits, man, that that run around abusing your power. Middle fingers up to you. Shout out to my writers, my content creators, my oppressed brethren, the ones that's sweating and holding their tongue, just trying to get through the week, man. Salute to y'all for your uploads, for putting your heart and soul into all of your content every single day that you get on this space. Salutes to all of you. I hope all is well. We are approaching the final day of the week, and I am just blessed and grateful to see you guys one more time. No Name Goddess, my brother Bink, man. I seen you pop up on IG in the chat, man. I appreciate y'all for pulling up. We got some stuff to talk about tonight, folks. And I'm not gonna keep you. I'm gonna bring these gentlemen up. You should be familiar with them by now. And if you're not, that's something that I think that you should do a little bit more research on. Look down in your soul, deep down in your soul, and ask yourself, what is keeping you from getting all of this information from these soul brothers, man? If you've never been a part of any of these live streams, I gotta tell you, you're really missing out. You're really missing out. And tonight is not going to be any different. So, without further ado, let me bring in Mr. Morrow and Mr. Matthews, two M's. Let's go. Oh. What up, what up, what up, what up, what up?
Mr. Merrill, how are you today?
Talking with the mute on. I'm good, fellas. How are y'all today?
I'm well, thanks. Long time no see. Great to see you.
Same here.
It's Thursday, right?
Yes, it is.
All day.
Anytime you're above the ground is always a victory. I don't care what you got going on in life. Count your blessings. Really, count your blessings. Today is no different. And it's a privilege to sit with you guys again tonight. This came across my desk like everything else comes across my desk. Double standards. We've all heard the term. We've all been a part of it, experienced it in one way or another. It doesn't just target relationships. It spans into religion. It spans into your work field, your profession. Let's just get into it. No need to hold back on anything. First, I want to know from you guys, to you, what is a double standard? And who benefits more from these double standards? Is this something that just exists in one demographic, or is it all across the board? Uh, if we can start with whoever got something on their spirit, it don't make a difference the order. Um, so I'll 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 do it like this. A double standard to me is when one person is capable or able to do something that another is not. They could do the same thing, but they would get different results, or they would get judged or looked at differently for doing or going after the same type of uh, outcome or position or whatever it might be, specifically directly tied to. Like if you're going after a job or a position and they look at you as a guy that's 6 foot 200 solid pounds, and you're clean cut, you have a certain complexion to you, you might get the job over the guy who is 5'7", not that built, uh, doesn't have the same charisma or personality as the other person, but you're just as qualified. What is your definition of double standards? What does it really mean to you, gentlemen?
I think a double standard is one when the result of an action is different for the same exact action. So if I do X and something happens to me, and yourself or Jason does the exact same thing I did, and you get a different result to that action based on whatever, the circumstances is, that's a double standard. Or same thing the other way. If the requirements is different for the same exact, and I'll use the example you just used for if you're looking for a job, if person A has a different set of requirements than person B for the same exact position, then that's when you get a double standard. So I think it could be both ways. It could be the way things are set up. It could also be the results of an action. And my example of that would be just the most common one, at least the one we see right now, is just um, the results of policing or profiling. If person A got pulled over for X crime, what's the result of that crime? And if person B got pulled over for X crime and they get a whole different result, then that's your double standard.
Yeah, I think that double standard is a result of labeling, and it's a result of what that labeling means. So to echo what both of you have said, yes, there is that sense that either a set of requirements or a set of standards is different for each person. I wholeheartedly agree. My thing is always what creates that, and it's the belief that a difference exists, or the difference must be created, and these differences are all engineered. They're all created. They don't exist naturally. uh, be- Between the social construct of humanity, there really is no difference other than the one that we decide to create. And so it is the standard that is set for one group that does not apply to the other, or vice versa. It's the standard that one group does not have to abide by that others must. Now, to answer the second part of your question, who benefits? Well, it's usually the one that's setting the standard. They've set that standard to better adjust for their group, and to marginalize the group that must meet the secondary standard that does not apply, or requires more burden of proof of responsibility that the first group does not. And it's all it is a construct of belief that I justify my actions and I justify my behavior because I believe there's a difference between myself and you for whatever reason. Could be racial, it could be religious, could be geographic. The biggest one that I've seen is economic. The economic disparity that exists. People who have a certain economic status get certain things, and if you don't meet that, well, you're shit out of luck. And regardless of what that standard is, to impose that, it's ridiculous.
I,
You
I
was about to
think,
say something?
yeah, I think most double standards come from or you saying you're asked who benefits, the person in power benefits, or the person that, you know, is in power or is trying to gain power or needs power. And it could be as simple as, you know, one person over another, or one group over another, or one person over a big group.
I agree. You know what's interesting about this? I've listened and I've watched these things on different platforms. I've experienced it firsthand on both sides. Power is definitely a huge component in this. I've heard in my observations this always being a element, which is the term that is a biological aspect in terms of why certain situations comes about in terms of who is in positions to benefit more versus the other class of man or woman. So if you're a woman who is just a woman and all you really have to do is look decent, keep yourself up, just exist. Let's just say just exist. You are by definition excluded from having to go through certain loopholes and jump certain hurdles to obtain things that other person or personnel would be. A guy who has fame, fortune, he has a certain hierarchy within the realm of the top percent of whoever the man is in this competitive thing we call trying to survive. If you got the money, that means that you can walk to the front of the line. If you're a woman, you can just walk to the front of the line. So basically, I guess what I'm getting at is this more of a biological thing where it's like, all right, it just is what it is, you know. We're stronger, we're given certain physiological things that put us in positions to have this. Oh, I can sleep with whoever I want to sleep with because I'm a man. I was born to spread my seed, so it's okay if I have a high body count. But if a woman does it, she's looked at like we need to shun her and put her in a whole different galaxy away from all of. She's tainted. We can't touch that. Or is it a combination of everything? Like if we're being honest, men have certain things that we can do, and women have certain things that they can do. Is this a power thing, or is this a biological thing?
Mr. Merrill, I go ahead.
Oh, okay. Um, I do not believe. I'm gonna go back to something Jason said. I don't think it is. I mean, maybe to a certain extent, but I don't think the majority of it is biological. I think the majority of it is. I think the phrase he used was social construct. A lot of this stuff is things we as people have created, and over the years, decades, centuries, we think that those things are the norm. So those are the things people gravitate to, and but it I, those I don't believe a double standard is biological at all. These are man-made situations, and I love that phrase he had. That they are social constructs that we created to keep people down. You got to think of it this way, right? For just look at the rich versus the poor. Rich versus poor doesn't have anything to do with how much money you have. It has everything to do with how much money you have compared to somebody else. Because if we all had $50 billion, nobody would be rich. We would all be equal. But if you got $50 billion and your average person has 10, now you're super rich and that person is super poor because of the comparison to the two. So that's the way double standards are. Double standards are things we created to say, okay, I'm going to put you in this box and I'm going to leave you over here. Or I'm going to look down on you because you're over here because that makes me feel better. Or whatever the situation may be.
So I love how you said that, because it really does come down to the idea of comparison. And in order to have comparison, you must have something that is worthy of comparing. And the only thing that is worthy of comparing is what we can justify. So in most cases, the reason why there's a comparison, especially in regards to the gender idea, is because we're comparing for a specific outcome. What makes men more capable or provide better access than what is given to women? So you're looking at very specific traits that are going to compare and contrast men and women. All that does is breed division. And division is probably the worst cancer that exists within human society right now. Because all that it's doing is it's creating disunity. By nature, division is disunity. So when you decide that you're going to drop the comparisons and you say, how can I contribute? And how can you contribute? And how can our contributions work towards something greater? It's an idea of called competitive collaboration. The idea that yes, there are different qualities that each one has, but the competition is with yourself, becoming better than who you were. And same thing with the person that you were talking about, man, woman, doesn't matter. And understanding that you're both working towards a common goal. You better yourselves in order to more appropriately or more efficiently, more effectively reach that common goal. The competition isn't with someone else. It's always within here. But the moment that you make it about someone else, you devolve competitive collaboration into pure competition. And in competition, someone wins and someone loses. And when you have the mindset of the loser, must be made to know that they lost, why they lost, and to be reminded they will always lose. I mean, you're creating a powder keg situation where eventually you're gonna light the wrong fuse and it's gonna go up, and you're going to have a situation you never counted on, and you didn't count on it because you believed that for whatever reason you deserved to have um, more benefit, more opportunity than someone else did, and you treated that person as if they deserved less. There's a great book out there called The Anatomy of Peace by the Arbinger Institute. I've referred to this book before. I love this book. I've read it about 4 times. And it really talks about how when we decide that we're going to create division with each other, we are creating a sense where someone is superior and someone is inferior. Eventually, the person who feels inferior is going to get to the point where they don't want to feel that anymore and will attack the person that has made them feel inferior and who has been reminded they're superior. But all that does is it devolves the system. It does not create any kind of movement forward. It focuses on the lack rather than focuses on the opportunity.
So this premise surrounds everything being technically programmed into our minds to compete with each other, essentially putting man versus man versus woman, so on and so on. So this whole idea that women get privileges that we don't is a societal issue, and not more so something that stems just from them being spoiled or raised to think that everything is supposed to go their way, or a parent bringing their child up to think that talking back and being belligerent and disrespectful to their elders, being prideful, and all of these different things is really just a repetitive problem that stems from the father or the mother learning that same habit, and it just got passed on and on and on. My whole thing with that is, if that's the case, then how come the sentences, like in terms of a man and a woman going to prison, their punishments are completely different for similar crimes? Or how come if a man gets pulled over and he gets a ticket, he gets slapped with a $100 fine, that woman might be able to show off a little cleavage or something. She might bat her eyes or something, and they'll just give her a warning and let her go on about her way. Is that a part of this whole plot to dehumanize and separate us too?
Jason?
I was just going to say, so in order to answer that question, you have to ask a deeper question. So when it comes to being pulled over, who's pulling over whom? When it comes to the justice system, who's the one that's creating the sentences for the men and the women? There's a deeper question that has to be asked, because just the idea of saying, well, this is true, that's an overgeneralized statement that doesn't have any kind of context, and context matters. Because if you've got a female sitting judge who is presiding over a murder case that has been committed by a woman, and it was heinous, it was horrendous, and it is known what the law is and what the punishment needs to be, what is the likelihood of that woman getting off with a lesser sentence versus a man who sees the woman as being someone who is the fairer sex? And that phrase is important, the fairer sex. So if they're fairer, what does that mean? Well, it means they should they should be treated fairly, or they should be treated in a fairer way, gentler. Versus a female judge is like, hey, you committed the crime, you do the time. Good luck. I've heard stories from female inmates who have gotten out that prison is no picnic for women, and it's there is just as much brutality in a female prison as a men's prison. I think the perception that we've been given, or the perception that we've been fed about women and about men is different because of how we address the idea of sex. And really, this is when I talk about sex, I mean intercourse, not gender. So the idea of sex in itself is something that we're being identified as. Your sex is what determines your punishment, and that is a part of the structured system. Because saying that, well, if you are one sex, if you are one gender, you should be treated more harshly. If you are the fairer sex, you should be treated more gently. And in cases where seduction can be utilized, it should be honored. It should be rewarded. And I think that these things they are part of the systemic crisis that we are seeing in society. Is the idea that we are being labeled by our attributes and by our behaviors and decisions rather than as people.
Derek, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, what you're asking, I think you got to understand that double standards come from the preconceived notion of the person at that moment that has the power. So, right, if I go back to your example of a woman getting pulled over, we she may get away with it because that if it's a male officer, she may get away with it because that male officer doesn't see that woman as a threat. Whereas if yourself or I get pulled over, that male officer first, when he first pulls us over, the situation is going to be handled differently just because we're a male and male, he's already going to have a heightened sense of the moment. So you got to most or all double standards come from the whatever that person harbors in that moment for that situation, right? So but it happens way more than it could happen the other way too, right? I've been if a male is pulled over by a female officer, then how does that double standard work? And again, it's gonna go on whatever that officer feels, whatever her preconceived notion of that traffic stop at that moment. But I just want to think. I want you to think of it like this, right? Just think of the biggest double standard we have here is racism. And why do I say that? Because at its core, racism says you're better than me because of the color of your skin, or vice versa, whatever, whichever way you want to. But racism says person A is better than person B for no other reason than the color of your skin. That is the double standard. Now here, um, that double standard was created because they had to justify slavery. That's the only reason, or at its core, that's the main reason of the beginning of this country's history, right? With that topic, it was because they had to justify slavery. So again, that goes back to the thing we were trying to say earlier as a double standard is a tool that's used by person A to justify or to um, it's a tool that they use to weaponize to get what they want.
Okay.
And it's just inherently unfair just by the term.
You know, a lot of these topics are, if you really peel back the layer, is superficial at its core. the whole double standard thing to me, it always felt like it was just shoved down our throat intravenously, and everybody just adopted it. It just became genetically attached, if that makes sense, to the point to where you just feel like it was just a part of you the whole time. So, okay, we were born this way. I was supposed to be the hunter and this, that, and the third, and you're supposed to be the nurturer, and you're not supposed to be promiscuous, and you're not supposed to be doing A, B, C. And one of the things that I really look into, and you said something about it, about the officer switching roles if it was a man versus a woman, is like, who's judging who more harshly and more strict? Is the man going to judge the man equally as he judges the woman versus the woman judging the woman and judging the man? And when I ask myself that, is like, now you got to bring in the moral part of it. Are we going off of standards? Are we following the oath? Are we saying, all right, this is my job, I'm responsible for keeping people safe, or whatever the position is? It's my duty to uphold the law to its fullest. So I can't be preferable in who gets the least or the most out of this. And I've seen so many times, and I'll give you an example. I was watching a YouTube clip. It was a man. He was an officer patrolling. It was probably around 12 midnight, and the boyfriend was celebrating his girlfriend's 21st birthday. He was going over 90 miles an hour. Um, they was drinking. The officer pulled him over. Now, what you would have assumed is that the guy was going to give them a ticket, take the car, but the young lady persuaded the officer to let him slide. Oh my God! Don't arrest him, or don't punish us. This is, we just wanted to celebrate our, my birthday. We apologize. It won't happen again. All right, I'm gonna give you a warning, but don't speed no more. It was about a 20-minute video. Part two comes up, and in part two, aftermath scene, car demolished. You know, if you've ever seen a commercial where the car is doing a demonstration on how fast a car goes before it completely gets engulfed in the impact, this was the aftermath of a vehicle crashing into a property. The same officer from 20 minutes ago arrived on the scene. The car that killed two people was the same young lady and man that he pulled over 20 minutes ago. I say all that to say, had he been more stern with her and him, that could have been prevented. So my question now becomes, if this is all just programmed in our heads, who's more strict in these areas when it's time for things to be handled correctly? Because if this is just matrix blue pill, red pill is all programmed in us to be this way. We just lost 2 lives off the fact that he was under the assumption that he was doing the right thing when the whole time it was the girl influencing him not to punish them. If she wasn't in the car and that same scenario happened, would he have gotten arrested? Would that incident would have happened?
So I've been in situations like this. My car wasn't totaled, and I didn't die, obviously. But I've been in situations where I was going way too fast because I was just either um, celebrating with my, at that time, my wife, became my ex-wife, or with someone else, or I was doing something else, and I didn't. I was able to get out of the ticket just by saying, I'm really sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I'll be more mindful next time. And it was me that was doing the talking, not anyone else. And I was also able to get out of that. There have been times when I haven't been able to do that. I don't think this shows double standard. The example that you're giving, at least not. It doesn't seem like that to me. What it seems to me is that there was a really good use of persuasion because of two people who seemed at the time to the officer to just be having a little bit too much fun, not really paying attention to what they're doing, hopefully hoping that the warning would be enough to have them more mindful of their circumstance, which didn't work, and irresponsibility took their lives. You can look at it as the officer didn't do his job, or you can look at it as the two kids that were acting irresponsibly did not take the hint, and they just continued doing what they wanted to do because they didn't believe that they were going to have any kind of consequences happening to them. It's important to really understand what the context is and what's going on. I think that if you want to look at the double standard between men and women, these are a little more concrete, like a circumstance where that women have gotten away with that men have a harder time with, or a circumstance where being one gender creates a known quantifiable benefit over the other because of how we've been programmed. That's just the way I see it.
Any thoughts down there?
Um, I I think in that instance, you're assuming it's a double standard because they got away with it, right? I think before you can say definitively is if would that particular officer have let off anybody else in that same situation, right? I got a friend. I just talked to him the other day. He's a cop. Said he pulled somebody over. Um, it happened to be somebody he knew. Registration was expired. He let her go. But he also said, now if you're looking at that in that one instance, you're going to be like, he let this person go. This person was, and whatever their, I don't want to get into what their geographics was, but he let this person go, whatever. That's not right. But if you know that officer, anytime he pulls somebody over for because their registration isn't right, he lets every single last one of them go. He tells them, "Go get it registered. If I see you again and it's not registered, I'll give you a ticket then." But when you look at it from that one instance, you think it's a double standard when it's not. I think and especially, right, myself and yourself, um, and the history that people of color, that us black individuals have with policing, we go into situations already with a preconceived notion of what we think is going to happen. and it don't got to be police, and it could be, walking down the street and you see this. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm driving down the street in a car, only person in the car. I pull up at a stoplight, and this is like a 3-lane or a 4-lane, two going both ways. The lady locks her door. Like, really, lady, what am I going to do? Hop out my car? But that was the preconceived notion that she had, that she thought I was going to do something to her in that moment, right? So I think a lot of people see double standards when they're not there because of whatever they think is going to happen. So earlier, when you first started your question, you said, you about like men being taught to be hunters of women. I forgot your exact phrase, but something like that. And then women not, if they do the same thing, they're labeled as whatever they're labeled as if they got a big body count, right? But those are all things we was taught. If I didn't grow up by where I grew up, if I grew up in a different country, maybe the way I was taught about those things would be different. Or if I grew up in a different neighborhood or different city, wherever. But if we grow up different, some of those things that we think is natural or genetics or biological, those is just traits we picked up growing up because of the people around us. Some good, some bad.
Yeah, when it all boils down to it, there's different traditions, different tribes, different countries that practice different beliefs in terms of this. Some places, they are extremist, and they go as far as the most heinous, unthinkable, unimaginable punishments for promiscuity. And I'm not saying or condoning whether it's right or wrong or anything of that nature. I'm really just trying to wrap my mind around this concept that one person can get away with beating the hell out of the other person, but the other person can't defend themselves. Jason wanted a more feasible um, explanation or example of what I meant. Um, Domestic violence is a huge issue, but it's more focused on, and I don't want to like target one specific thing because, like I said, this is a general issue. But in domestic violence, we hear more about women getting abused mentally, emotionally, so on and so on. But we don't really talk about men being murdered and given black eyes and things of that nature by the woman, because you're looking at it like, is this a woman? What can a woman really do to a man? But there are cases where women have, and I just watched the video. I did a live. Shout out to Six Rings. I did a live reaction to a video where the lady must have felt like her boyfriend was cheating on her. I don't know this backstory. Must have went on for a long period of time. One night they got drunk. They decided that they wanted to play Twister or some crazy shit like that. And there's a big suitcase in the living room. So they suggested playing hide and go seek, and he hides inside the suitcase. You can watch it back if you want. If you don't believe me, watch it back. They play hide and go seek. He hides in the suitcase. He zips up the suitcase, At some point, he can't breathe. He's having a hard time breathing. He's screaming for her to help her or to help him get out of the suitcase. F you, I ain't letting you out. Now, after all them women you done cheated on me with. She went upstairs, laid down. 12 hours later, realized, mind you, she's intoxicated. She recorded the whole thing on the phone. Came back downstairs 12 hours later. Moral of the story is he suffocated inside of the suitcase. She got tried, but she tried to play it off as if she didn't realize what she had done and things of that nature. And I'm only saying this to say, I don't know if you want to consider this a double standard or not, but we can't pretend like in these situations, if a woman puts her hands on a guy, he's supposed to just eat it up. He's supposed to walk away. He's not supposed to touch her. He's not supposed to respond or nothing. He's supposed to just keep going. But then what happens when the guy loses his life in the process, or something causes him to lose his job because of her belligerence, showing up, spitting, slapping, and defaming his name on the social media? And then you get in the comment section, you see women, you go, girl power, manifest, manifest, manifest. And the whole time, the guys are clowning him for letting her do what she did to him. The women are celebrating her, not holding her accountable. Someone help me understand that.
Well, there's definitely a double standard that exists, and not just there, in many, 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 many places, right? And in that case, whether it's I don't like to say whether things is fair or not. I just tell everybody there's this utopia that you think it should be, and then there's reality. The reality of um, domestic violence is 9 out of 10 domestic violence incidents is a man mistreating a woman. But there are instances where women, or whatever the number is, where women mistreat men. It's not that it doesn't exist. We can't say that. It definitely does exist. And the double standard comes in to the fact of, and again, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying this is what it is. That the court systems, because of the amounts of um, domestic violence the other way, they just don't treat it the same. And it's not just domestic violence. If you and if you know somebody that has that have had to go through the court system for child support, if you got to go through that system, same thing. If you're the mom, you're going to be looked upon more favorable than the man. It just is what it is. And we could all give you 50 million examples of where double standards exist. But I think for what you have to do in those cases is do what you did, point it out, say this is unfair, ignore social media, because we all know social media is the devil, for lack of a better term. They people go on social media and say those things because they think they can, and they think it's somewhat anonymous. They don't think they really got to live up to the things they say, but you can't get frustrated to a certain extent with the double standard. You got to address the double standard.
So this is probably part of the core of the social construct of the double standard and why it exists. It is nothing short of evil, pure and absolute evil. The way that this double standard has been allowed to create, based on crime statistics from 2018, 65% of domestic violence cases that are one-sided, meaning that one perpetrator attacks another with no repercussion, is actually woman on man. 65% of domestic violence cases are actually a woman perpetrating on a man, but they don't go reported because men believe that they should not have they should just have to deal with it. This is just part of being a man. This is what comes with it, and that's wrong because there isn't one person that should ever have to endure any kind of mistreatment by another.
Chasing, I don't mean to cut you off because I just want to ask what at right there at that point that you're at. I just want to ask the question: is which is what I said earlier? Is that because this is the way we were brought up and this is the way we were taught?
It's the way that we were taught, but also the perception that exists. Because I have a very different very different view. It's not a very popular one, but I have a very different view. And my view is something that I've taught both of my children. But if someone is going to act violently towards you, you defend yourself. Period. And that's a view that I was given as well. Not a very popular opinion. That's fine. But when it comes to the fact that, well, the belief that a woman has the ability to express herself in a violent way more than a man does is wrong. And the fact that there are instances, many instances, where no fault divorce has led to now women deciding that they're going to not only divorce their husbands for a financial gain, but they're also going to keep the children as a way of being able to manipulate, punish, and further their financial gain from that marriage is also wrong. And we can go into at a later time what I believe is the cause of this from what I've researched and the things that I've found. But the core thing is that this is manufactured. This is intentional. It is intentional for men to feel like they're powerless to do anything when met with aggression from a female, because females are weaker, so they should not have they should not be dealt with in the same instance that a man is. Derek, if I come up to you and we're in a conversation and then it becomes confrontational, we both know that there has to be a sense of control that we both have because it can go south really fast. And if it goes south, it's going to get violent because men have a capacity for violence that exists. We know this. This is historically proven. And it is in our best interest to stay away from that as much as possible unless it can't be resisted. And for whatever reason, this same understanding is not had between a man and a woman. That a woman can go off and act belligerently, and if she doesn't like what she gets, she can slap a guy and say, "You do what I tell you," and that she has the ability to dominate and create a situation where now she sees herself as superior and a man is inferior simply because has the ability to act badly without any kind of repercussions.
So
Go ahead.
that was the is it a lot of things we do is because of the repercussions, right? So a woman, like you just said, a woman thinks she can smack a man because there are no repercussions. A man is not going to smack a woman because of the repercussions, right? A
Unless he
lot.
doesn't care about the repercussions.
Well, that's another whole nother thing.
Yeah.
You were taught, or you taught your kids, don't walk away from a fight. But now the repercussions of fighting or violence is back to the double standard. A woman may be able to get away with it. Or, I mean, not even say a woman. Person A may be able, or Group A may be able to get away with it. Group B might not be able to get away with the same thing. So the reason people do things, the reason the actions may be different is because of people are afraid of the differing repercussions. Thus, the double standard.
I agree. And I never said that don't walk away from a fight. I said defend yourself, because defending yourself involves also avoiding the situation. I taught self-defense for 15 years, and the first thing I always teach somebody is to avoid a confrontation as much as possible, because it's not worth it. But if it's unavoidable, make sure the person understands that what they're getting into is not something that they would ever want to revisit again. So, and in regards to that, if if it's possible to avoid a situation, absolutely. And if it's not, if it's unavoidable, make sure that if you're going to uh, if you're going to welcome the consequences of your actions, make sure it's worth it. And what it's the kind of thing where I teach them, if you have to visit violence on somebody because they won't leave you alone, make sure they know not to ever do that again, or make sure that they will never want to do that again, and also be willing to accept the repercussions of your actions. Know what they are and be willing to accept them. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is every decision or every action has consequence, and as long as you're willing to accept that consequence, that's what matters.
But we also have to be, we're going to have to acknowledge the fact that if me and you were in the same exact situation and it ended in violence, there's a very high probability that what happens to you is not the same as what happens to me. And that's just because of the way we look. And that's where the double standard comes in.
I can't deny that, because I have seen that before. And so, yes, I agree with you. And that's another that the idea of that double standard is as disgusting as the idea of sexual double standard. If you and I decide that we're going to get into a tussle because, well, I don't like your hat and you don't like my glasses, and there's no way that we can get around it. And it only has to come to violence. That's the only way that it can be resolved. In the aftermath, you and I should be treated the exact same way. Well, you both decided that you were going to get involved in an altercation. These are the rules against altercation, so you both are going to have to deal with the repercussions. Sorry, not sorry. And it is dependent on the outlook of the officers involved, the way that they perceive you and I, and what they believe is more appropriate at that moment. And yes, it could be completely different things. It could be the fact that one of us is treated more equitably than the other, and that's something that I am very much against. In fact, there was a time when I did get into an altercation with someone who was black. We got into a pretty good tussle. And at the end of it, when the police were called, he was being arrested and I wasn't. And I flipped out, because the fact that I was being allowed to walk away, he was being arrested. I wanted to find out why. What's going on? This was a misunderstanding that we had that just resulted in violence. There's no reason for this. If you're taking him away, why are you arresting me? I actually got kind of belligerent about it. I did get arrested, and I was oddly happy with that circumstance, because I did not agree with the fact that my friend, who I had the disagreement with, should have had any kind of different circumstance than me.
So that's what I meant when I said earlier that we have to acknowledge that these double standards exist, right? And then we also have to understand the difference between the way it should be and the way it really is. And that's why when you know you're in a situation where double standards exist, you have to move, or the person has to move differently. We have to do things differently because of the outcome of what may happen from that double standard. You got arrested because you got mad, but originally you weren't going to. And again, that's the double standard. And again, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it is what it is, and we have to be able to deal with it in that moment or in all moments.
Yeah, and I think that this is the only way past this, the only way that we can rise above this double standard, because you can't ignore it. If it's systemized, then there's no way to ignore it. But what you can do is you can create a better way forward where the possibility of these double standards being exercised is minimized. And the only way to do that is to treat each other in ways that I see you as a human being, rather than a compilation of things that make you what I see. I interact with you as a human being and do that with others as well. Is that the pathway to eliminating it? No, there's no way. The only way to eliminate it is if the governments that oversee these kinds of behaviors quash it from a higher standpoint. They actually make reforms that make it much less likely or even punishable to do these kinds of things. But until we get to that point, the only thing that we can do is by finding out how can you and I work together in a way where we minimize the need for those double standards to be exercised.
And I see you got somebody else in here, so.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. So,
Good evening,
if
brother.
I could just chime in for a moment, I appreciate that. If I could chime in for a moment, I'd like to challenge everyone in here to even analyze the word double standard. Double implies, dual, and dual being together. So if there's two, then there's also one. So what I like to add to this is the singular standards, because in the case of, let's say, I don't know, a quote unquote white officer, showing, showing aggressions to a black suspect, that's a singular standard for me. And I say this because although we all are human, in a singular standard, one person comes from a different cultural background, one person has a different color skin, and one person is also seen from a worldview as whatever they're seen as. When when a white suspect is pulled over, usually he's not seen as dangerous, now, but that's just a cultural standpoint, and that's a single standard. The way it becomes a double standard is by what measure we're measuring it from. Now, if we're measuring it from a human rights standard, it's automatically a double standard. But if we're measuring it from a black and white standard, and heavy quotes on that, because I don't really subscribe to the whole black and white thing, but that's another story. But if we're looking at it from the standard of black and white, then it falls into a singular standard, because black people or dark-skinned people all around the world are looked in a certain lens. You can see it in the advertisements in Spanish countries. It's always the lighter skinned Brazilians or the lighter skinned who are the faces of the country. In India, it was revealed that even Gandhi had a problem with dark-skinned Indians. So when the whole world is looking at the singularity as black being the absence of color or evil, it's just something that's embedded in you. At least that's what I'd like to add to the conversation. If you guys could maybe expand on what I'm expanding on.
No, I'm glad you said that, because I also think, right, you got to, especially us, we gotta. When I look at me personally, when I look at somebody, I don't. When I see Jason, I don't see every white person on the face of the planet. I see Jason. I judge Jason on Jason. I don't judge Jason on what Jason's mom did, what Jason's cousin did, what every right. When I if I have an interaction with a police officer, I don't judge that police officer on what every other police officer did. I don't judge uh, the preacher on what every other preacher did. I think uh, me personally, when I interact with people, I don't, like you just said, I don't see black or white. I see that individual, and I get that individual his respect until that individual makes it known that he shouldn't have my respect. And I
Absolutely.
think it's dangerous just to judge a person based on a preconceived idea of what a mass of people is.
Absolutely.
I
I agree.
I love that you said that. And this is why I love having conversations with you, Mr. Merrill, because we don't have enough of them. Because you,
You can just call me Derek, that's fine, or D.
I
Most
can't
people
see your
just call
first
me
name,
D.
so that's why I remember your last name. But Derek, yeah, we don't have enough of these conversations. I really enjoy your approach. You have a very measured approach. I really enjoy that. And one thing that you had said before about the fact that, yeah, with my experience, it's because I got mad versus the friend that I was having a fight with who was arrested for what that is, and the fact that when you see someone interacting with them for the person that they are rather than what they represent is the most key thing. And it's only when you're able to look at someone for exactly who they are. Are they worthy of your respect? Have they done enough to be someone that you can look at and say, yeah, I could learn to trust this person, or I could interact with this person and believe that they have more than two brain cells between their ears, and that they're worthy of interacting with at a level that I know a person who has intelligence, has emotional um, awareness, can really interact with, and it is at a person by person basis. The moment that you group people all together, you diminish everyone. You diminish every single person in that group by saying they're all like this, and you keep yourself from being curious about how the person in front of you, the person you are interacting with, how could they actually um, elevate a conversation or interaction, or how they can provide something that is of benefit to the experience.
You know what's interesting about that? It's just that it seems that there are some people who they don't seem to want to participate in the collective human experience. You know, we're social creatures, and if we were meant to not interact with each other, or be with one another. Oh, this person is flashing me. We would be all by ourselves. There would just be one man walking the face of the earth. And I embrace our differences. You know, I think Nas actually said a very profound lyric where he said, "People fear what they don't understand and hate what they can't conquer. I guess it's just the theory of man." It comes down to that a lot. Especially in the subject of policing. A lot of the times, what's an officer's excuse? I felt threatened. Now, a lot of the times they're using that as a cop out, but many a times it's a very, very true statement. You don't know what that other person is going to do. So, because of fear, you acted first, and you potentially destroy one life, a family. A lot of things can, in the heat of the moment, a lot of things can just have a domino effect and fall.
I wanna say this, right? We we were born into this world with absolutely no knowledge of anything other than being hungry, and having this connection with the person who brought us into this world. Everything was just here. A thought that just came across my mind was everything is, it always originates with a suggestion. And what I mean by suggestion is that when I was younger, I didn't know what a cookie was. It looked interesting to me. The suggestion was let my curiosity find out what this is. And so I partook of it and I liked it. A lot of what we are under was suggested to us. The ignorance comes in when you don't seek the absolute truth, when you put yourself in this wall that prevents you from exploring any other possibilities outside of what you were shown as you grew up. Just because I was raised by parents who might have did things a certain way doesn't mean that they had it 100% together. Just because I didn't have the most fabulous lifestyle doesn't mean that that's the best course of action for me. Whatever God's purpose and whatever his will is for your life, he is the he is the one who gives you everything that's perfect. Anything less than what he gives you is always going to be distorted, always. And you can mimic what you think is right. You can mimic how you feel you're supposed to deal with certain things and how you're supposed to give answers and deal with certain people, whatever. But at the end of the rainbow, God is the one who directs your footsteps and your paths. And then you step outside of anything that he has for you. You find yourself in these scenarios where you're spoiled, rotten. You think that everything belongs to you. You're greedy. You everything has to be your way or it's the highway. And I'm always going to include God in these scenarios because for me that's the reality of all of it. When the smoke clears, when you step outside of his will and you do and you live the way that you want to live and you don't constantly and consistently seek the truth, you put yourself at a disadvantage always. And that's why I feel we are the way we are with this whole double standard thing. I don't necessarily I agree with Jason said. I agree with what everybody say. I don't think that it's just something that was biologically indoctrinated in us. I think there's things that complement the other person.
You know,
I don't
I
think that this particular subject. Go ahead.
no. I just wanted to piggyback off of that. I agree, and as far as a biblical reference, though, what I'd like to say is Christ said, "Love, love thy neighbor as thyself, and love God with all thy heart and all thy strength." And when you fulfill those two commandments, everything is fulfilled. But he'll also say, "Pray for your enemies." There's a distinction there. There's a distinction that we're all not gonna be together. We're all not gonna agree. There's always gonna be some kind of clash. Um, the, it's just when Adam and Eve uh ate of the fruit, you know, they they basically they forfeited paradise. When man forfeited paradise, they forfeited a world without pain, a world without fear, you know, and then we came into this new covenant. Things, it's like things just changed. But I don't want to get too deep, because at the end of the day, also, the Bible is very allegorical. So it's a lot of literal and allegorical blends in there, and I don't want to cross those lines. So I just had to put that in there, that there is a distinction between, yes, we all come from the absolute, infinite intelligence, God, what have you, however you.
I think one of the things that I've come to learn, because I'm also a very religious person, and the whole idea of praying for your enemies, I think it's the whole idea. When Jesus died on the cross, he said, "God forgive them, for they know not what they do." And it's it's of that same vein. The people that are your enemies because they don't understand why they're your enemies, or they are your enemies because they are your enemy for the wrong reason, for a selfish reason. Because someone like Derek, I don't imagine that you have many enemies, Derek, but the ones that you have, they're probably your enemies because they want something specific that you are against. And because you're against it, they see that you are against them. And so they would probably see you as being their enemy because what you want and what they want is very different. Most likely what they want is very self-serving, and you don't seem like a very self-serving person. So that therein lies the idea that praying for your enemies, it's more about praying for their understanding that the reason why they see you as their enemy isn't for any other reason than their short-sightedness, rather than understanding that when if they were to be more of the idea of wanting something more than just for themselves, they'd probably want to understand more about why you are the way you are, or how you interact with your world as well, and wouldn't see you as an enemy at all. They'd probably see you as someone that they'd really want to get to know.
Since I guess we're going down the religious route, I will too. And but my thing will just be, I think some people are just the devil. I think they are just some people are just evil. For whatever reason, some people are just evil. Some people are just, I'm not saying they're born that way or they chose that way. However, they got that way. Some people are, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do to change them. They just are who they are. They're going to burn in hell. Maybe they're not even a person. Maybe they're just a demon in a person's skin. And I think have we have those people around us. We have those people to test you. You have those people to try you. You have, um, I mean, even in the Bible, there were wars, uh, wars of nations and wars of a person fighting an internal war, a person fighting a war with one other person. So that's not something we're ever going to get away with until we pass away. We and you know, Lord willing, you make it to heaven. So those things, which goes back to my point earlier, we all would love a utopia, but that just doesn't exist. And I still think we all have to realize the place that we are, the world that we're in. Yes, we want to strive to make it better, but we still have to be able to live in today. Hopefully, your actions from today make tomorrow better, and your actions from that day make the next day better. But you still have to live in the present, and you still have to fight those demons, whether they're physical or whether they're internal or whether they're mental. We all got demons, and we're all fighting them. Even Jesus himself had to fight demons.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
And we lost our other guy.
Very well said.
Thank you.
So we can close out with our final thoughts on this. I knew this was going to be one of those. It usually is when we all get on here. Shout out to Mr. Hanley for pulling up. Shout out to everybody in the chat, everybody on Instagram who tuned in for this, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. I would love to know y'all opinion on this subject. Something to think about. My final verdict on this, and then I'll hand it over to you. Double standards are the plant of the enemy. Just another spirit of error that has masterfully infiltrated each and every single one of us in some way. And if you can't identify that you're being manipulated and used by it, I would like to believe by the end of this, your perception will change about what it actually means. And those are my thoughts on it.
I think the one thing that I would say about double standards is that I believe that it's a symptom. And it's a symptom of a greater disease, which is selfishness, self-serving behavior, and the belief that one's own importance trumps that of another, or for whatever reason. And I think the moment we get rid, that we're able to excise those self-serving behaviors, and we're able to see people for exactly who they really are. We're able to interact with each other in a way that is not self-serving. That is when we'll see that things like double standards, things that like racism or other divisive habits and behaviors go away. But we first have to be willing to give up the self-serving behaviors. You're on mute, my friend.
Thank you. So Greg in the chat said we actually don't have enough conversations, and I 100% agree with him. We don't have enough of these conversations. We don't have enough of the hard conversations, the conversations that's going to move us forward. So first, I just want to say thank you for the pulpit. Thank you for the opportunity you're giving us to have these conversations, and for your audience that's listening, over all of those things. So, and then my last comment, just be everybody, think about, think about what you're doing, question everything. Yeah.
Wise words. Wise words. I salute everybody here. Derek, Jason, Mr. Hanley, Greg, Matt, everybody in the chat. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your points of views. I follow all of your comments. This could have went on more, but it just shows you how little people really care about these subjects, and they kind of steer away from them. But that's why I'm here. That's why we're here. That's why this channel exists, for these type of conversations, so that maybe we can get more eyes and ears on it, and maybe actually move forward with some change, that it doesn't involve gossiping and things of that nature. So y'all be on the watch for the next live. That's pretty much that. I hope it's happy Friday before we get off here. I hope you guys are safe on your destinations, wherever they may be leaving out of your prospective homes. I hope you have a blessed weekend. I hope your mind is clear after leaving this stream. If you need to reach out to me or anyone here, you know how to do it. Everyone here is on Facebook, IG. If you can't reach one, you can reach the other. We'll make it happen. But it's a community thing. Everybody is trying to be on one accord. So y'all enjoy the rest of your night. This is Assembly of Excellence saying good night and blessings to everyone.
Thank you so much, Melvin. And Derek, thank you so much for being here as well and being such a great person to converse with.
Thank you, gentlemen. Always a pleasure. Always my pleasure.